Hi folks, and welcome back to Quarantine According to Eddie. It's Wednesday the 13th of May. It is 4:05, and it's an important day today because today is the day that some lockdown restrictions have been eased. Well, I mean, they were announced before now, but now they have actually been eased. They're minor, but you know, it means some things are now allowed. Some level of social contact is allowed between two individuals. So on the one hand, you know, this is great. It means I can start actually checking in with the people who I haven't been able to check in with. There are some people who I have not heard back from in a while, so I'm looking forward to that. Just being able to, you know, even just make sure that they're okay, at a safe distance, of course. And you know, it has been a long time. I mean, if nothing else, you can track the progress of quarantine by the length of my hair. But on the other hand, yeah, is it really safe? It's hard to say. We just don't know. The data suggests there are still a lot of deaths, but we might be past a peak. You know, you've got to start opening up at some point. We will see. So, interesting times. Interesting times. Hey, who knows? Maybe there won't be many more of these videos after all. So for today's quarantine video, I want to talk a bit about some hardcore philosophy in the form of Wittgenstein and language games. Now, language games can be boiled down basically to the idea that words only have meaning within a context, and the same word can have a different meaning dependent on its context. It all depends on how you use it. Basically, language is completely connected to use, which then feeds back into language. The two are connected. And this is all very well and good, but what if the words true and false mean different things according to different contexts? Because you know, a word can mean, like the word bat can mean different things in different contexts, but if the words true and false means different things in different contexts, true and false, right and wrong, kind of lose all meaning. And the term that's used for this is non-cognitive. So a cognitive approach is one that suggests that true and false are fixed. Something can be proven to be true or proven to be false. There is the risk of this becoming non-cognitive. So, you know, true and false have no meaning. Essentially, you could argue the whole language games idea has no meaning. Now, some thinkers, however, believe that there is a cognitive route to language games, and I'm actually going to go into my own development of that, which I've built on D.Z. Phillips' idea, suggesting that language games is in fact a cognitive idea. Wittgenstein's language games is a very complicated idea, so I'm going to try and keep it brief and basic. If you want to know more about it, watch my video on the Philosophy According to Eddie playlist. But, in essence, the suggestion is, whenever you talk to someone, you are playing a game. And that game is the game of language, essentially. When you're talking to someone, there's a context in which you use words that you both agree on, which means you agree on the rules to the game. Much like, you know, you play a game and you have to agree on the rules. So every time you use language with someone else, you're playing a game. And words will have different contexts within each game. So, for example, if you're playing the sports language game, the word bat refers to an object which you can hit a ball with. If you're talking about creatures of the night, then the word bat within that language game refers to a little flying mammal. Incidentally, in German, bat is Fledermaus, which means flying mouse. Cute, huh? And maybe if we're talking about debating, a different game altogether, within that context, if you use the phrase off the bat, you're talking about someone making comments in a sort of improvised way, immediate response to something. So all of these games have got slightly different rules as to what words mean. And the thing is, we can never get out of playing games. We can't stop playing a game, because whenever we use language, we have to play by some rules. Otherwise, we wouldn't understand each other. And it is true that misunderstandings do happen. Someone thinks you're using one context when you're using another one. There's a lot of comedy based on that. But these misunderstandings show that language is based on context. And the context is also kind of based on the language as well. It's back and forth. Now the problem is, what about if you've got a word like true or false? The issue here, if every game is different, then how do we know what true and false mean? Because they could mean something different. One person could be referring to one type of truth, another person could mean something else by the word truth. Same with false as well. Because the games are separate, there could be differences. And we do actually see there are some differences in the way that the words like true are used. Religious truth, for example, is different to scientific truth. You could say that there's truth in the works of Shakespeare, but you wouldn't suggest that you could do an experiment to test the truth in Shakespeare. And the issue here is that if truth and false mean something different in every language game, those words become subjective. There is no way of actually saying whether something is objectively true or not. And that means that language essentially loses all meaning, because if you haven't got at that anchor point of saying this is true, this is false, if that's not objective, then how do you ever give context to say anything is true or anything is false? Facts lose all meaning. And this is a bit of a problem for language games. Now, based on the work of D.Z. Phillips, I'd like to offer a possible solution. Now, this is my own kind of solution to it, but it is based on the work of D.Z. Phillips. I owe him a lot. Another of Wittgenstein's ideas is the idea of family resemblance theory. The idea that we know things because they look similar to other things. So, for example, if we see a chair, we know it's a chair, even if we've never seen it before, not because there's a perfect form of a chair, but because we've seen other chairs before. And we've been told that that's a chair, we start to spot similarities. And this means that language games have got similarities to each other as well. And there will be overlaps between all kinds of language games. It won't be as simple as this Venn diagram, this just illustrates it. But you know, some language games will have some words that mean the same, and some words that are different to each other, whereas other language games will have words that are the same as each other and are different again. But there'll be some crossovers between all of them. So say, for example, the example of off the bat, that phrase in debating, well, that comes from cricket, the idea of playing the ball off the bat. So that has some crossover with the sports language game in that section down there. And so that's a form of crossover. Now, if every language game agrees on one thing, then you could argue that that has got a fixed nature. So if every language game, in all contexts, agree that a word always means the same thing, then that word essentially becomes fixed. I mean, it's not objective, but it's as close to objective as you're going to get. Now, what if that word, or those words, are true and false? Because we do really know what's meant by true and false. Correct, incorrect, verified, unverified. And I would put it out there as a suggestion that these words could be the point at which every language game crosses over. And if that is the case, truth and false become words that can be relied upon. You can make essentially objective judgments because the words essentially have become objective, because nobody's using them in a way that doesn't cross over. Now you may then go for the, but what about, say, religious truth or literary truth? Well, you could say that maybe the word itself is not clear enough. You know, maybe it spills over into more than one part of the Venn diagram. At which point you have to, make your definition more clear. But once you make the definition of what truth actually is clear enough that everyone can agree on it, if you can do that, it essentially becomes objective. So it is possible, if you spend enough time to work it out, to make the words true and false have as good as an objective meaning, which then makes language games cognitive. So you can make statements about what's true and false, and it means that you can all talk about the same thing, even though you're kind of coming from your own different directions, which is a very interesting and exciting idea. Now, there have been many debates about Wittgenstein and language games for many years, and adding my opinions into the mix I don't think is going to solve any of those problems. I'm sure lots of people will have lots of thoughts and lots of ideas of their own to add in. So of course, as usual, I want to hear your comments and your questions. Get in touch. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and see you next time.